Greetings, everybody. In this opportunity, we have to see Vulnerable Users, chapter number 5 of New Driver's Handbook. It all starts with this. Although everyone who uses public roads is likely to suffer some kind of accident or another, certain people are more vulnerable. These include children, pedestrians in general, particularly old and drunk people, cyclists, motorcyclists, and others. It says by the World Health Organization that pedestrians, cyclists, and drivers of two-wheeled motorized vehicles and their passengers account for almost half of traffic-related fatalities worldwide. So that has to be taken care of. About the pedestrians. In Chile, crashes involving pedestrians account for approximately 15% of all accidents. However, deaths as a cause of these accidents account for approximately 40% of all traffic-related deaths. The high risk of accident associated with vulnerable parties is related to their unpredictability, which means that their movements are less predictable than those of other people on the roads. Therefore, a driver will find it harder to anticipate pedestrian behavior. Additionally, pedestrians tend to commit many infractions, including suddenly stepping into the road or crossing the road inappropriately, failing to use pedestrian crosswalks or overpasses, and not respecting traffic signals. As a driver, you must always be alert and anticipate possible infractions of pedestrians. If you're driving in the left lane and you see a vehicle stop in the right lane before a crosswalk, you should slow down and be prepared to stop, as pedestrians may have begun to cross. You must also slow down and be prepared to stop when approaching a stopped bus. A pedestrian could suddenly appear in the road in front of or behind the bus, or could be running to get on the bus. Show consideration for pedestrians. Drive carefully and slowly when near pedestrians, especially on busy commercial streets, in residential areas, near bus stops, educational establishments, food trucks, or sales carts, or driving through small towns. Be cautious with pedestrians. You may not see them, and they could appear suddenly behind or in front of parked vehicles. Also, pay attention to the presence of drunk people in the road. It is preferable that a drunk pedestrian get their own way rather than being struck by a car or run over. You should also be aware that people can suffer from any kind of impediment, whether visible or invisible. A pedestrian, for example, can have problems with vision or hearing or mobility problems. Those who have impediments are not required to announce them. As a result, always reduce your speed when you suspect a pedestrian could have some kind of difficulty. Drive carefully and show consideration towards elderly people or those with disabilities. Generally, roadways are not well adapted for people with difficulties. Give them time to cross and do not assume that a pedestrian or cyclist can hear your vehicle because they may be hard of hearing. About elderly pedestrians. Due to their unique characteristics, people of advanced age have a higher probability of dying as a result of being hit by a car compared with younger people. Drivers should be especially respectful with this group of pedestrians in order to avoid getting into accidents or striking someone with their vehicle. In addition, it is important to understand the principal problem that many seniors or elderly people face as pedestrians. For example, excessive noise in the environment, which can make hearing more difficult, difficulty assessing vehicle speed, reduced mobility, and a slower reaction time. On some occasions, there is a difficulty to distinguish between the colors of traffic lights. Scarcity of pedestrians crosswalks in some areas. Roads can be too wide to cross and may be poorly illuminated. For example, an elderly person may need 4 seconds more than a young person in order to cross a street about 16 meters wide. They may have orientation problems when they do not know the streets well. Upon crossing the street, an elderly person could return to the sidewalk before fully crossing or stop in the middle of the road, or could be unaware of traffic and suddenly step off the sidewalk onto the street. People who buy their impediments. A lot of people listen music using earphones. and we often observe pedestrians and cyclists who travel on the streets using these devices, completely acoustically isolated from everything around them. Another implement that technology has provided in the past few years is cell phones. A pedestrian using his or her cell phone will most likely be more occupied with the conversation in the cell phone than the traffic. It is probable that these people can step into the roadway without warning. As a result, use extreme caution in these cases. About children. Many accidents happen when children are across the street. Children live their own world, and which is why you, as a driver, should know how they act. Warning. Children are small. Because of that, they are difficult to see when playing behind a parked vehicle, for example. Children also do not have completely developed vision until they are 15 years old. Their visual field is limited and they only see one thing at a time. Children act impulsively. They do what they want without thinking about the consequences. Children are always playing. To them, everything is a game. They don't consider that traffic can be dangerous. Children are relatively safe in traffic starting around 9 and 12 years old. Children have difficulty judging distance and speed. The presence of a child in the roadway is in and of itself a warning sign. As a driver, you are responsible for avoiding accidents. You are the one who should have the knowledge and be on the watch, not the child. A child cannot be the cause of an accident. You have to avoid the accident. So be especially cautious and prepare to stop in, for example, residential areas where children are playing on the roadways and sidewalks. When children get out of a vehicle in an appropriate side, close to schools and educational establishments at the beginning or at the end of the school. When passing a stopped school bus or transport vehicle, there may be children getting off or on, so be careful with that as well. When near a vehicle selling candy or ice cream, because children are more interested in these things than paying attention to the traffic. About children in cars. Driving with children in the vehicle can be very demanding. It can be difficult to listen to them fighting or praying as you drive. As a result, stimulate them to travel quietly. And do not forget to use child safety locks on the doors, which prevent them from opening from the inside. Get your children used to wearing seatbelts from a young age and try to always set a good example. Children always imitate their parents. Reward children when they behave correctly. We all need some words of praise now and then. The safe transport of children in a motorized vehicle is a challenge and an obligation for the vehicle's driver, since it is the driver's responsibility the use of an appropriate child restraint system when transporting children in a car. Traffic accidents are one of the main causes of premature death in children in Latin America and Caribbean countries. In Chile, during the last decade, 760 children under 12 years old died. About 49% of them died as a passenger in a vehicle or a traffic accident, and 49,500 were injured. To reduce risks or injuries, it is necessary to use child restraint systems, appropriate to the weight, height, and age of the child it is going to be transported. Since 2006, the transport of children in those child restraint systems is mandatory. Nonetheless, starting March on 2016, these requirements were increased, banning the transport of children under 12 years old in the front passenger seat, except for single cab cars, hence making it an obligation for children under 12 to travel on the back seats using these child restraint systems, appropriate to their weight, height, and age, or just the seatbelt if this one fits the child properly. Moreover, since March on 2017, traffic law mandates vehicle drivers to transport in a child restraint system all minors up to 8 years old, meaning until they turn 9, or of a height lower or equal to 135 centimeters and weight of 33 kilos or less. This requirement is mandatory for private vehicles. Exempt of this obligation are public transport, school transport, and vehicles of similar characteristics. Non-compliance with this regulation is sanctioned as a severe traffic violation, which carries a fine to pay of 1.5 to 3 UTM and a driver's license suspension of 5 to 45 days. But what are child restraint systems? Child restraint systems such as rearward facing baby seat, forward facing child seat, high backed booster seat, and seat belt are devices designed to safely transport children inside a vehicle in all types of trips. One must keep in mind that it's not enough to use a child restraint system, but to use it correctly, since a device not properly installed does not give the necessary protection to children to travel safely, generating a false sense of safety. Because of this, the car seat must be well fixed to the vehicle seat, carefully following the instructions written in the user's manual of the child restraint system, and the child well fastened to the car seat through the harness or seat belt. These devices must be used since the child's first trip, meaning since they come out of the health center where they were born and up until they use the car seat belts directly, just as shown in the following picture. So, the seatbelt has to pass through the middle of the shoulder and the chest, and the waist portion of the seatbelt has to go over the hips, not over the abdomen. The child have to sit supporting his whole back properly in the seat, and feet have to rest completely on the vehicle's floor. The child still have to use a high-backed booster seat or booster seat when the seatbelt passes through the neck or through the face, as is shown in the picture. The incorrect use of seatbelts causes important injuries in organs located in the abdominal area, such as liver, intestines, bladder, and kidneys, that can seriously compromise a person's life. Considerations to choose a child restraint system. Many aspects must be considered when choosing a child restraint system for the child you will be transporting. The relevant aspects to consider are the following. First, weight, height, and age, as we said before, of the child. You must choose a child restraint system according to the child's development stage, selecting a model suited to the child's weight, height, and age. It is recommended that for child's first stages of life, that go from birth until 4 years old, the CRS be installed facing backwards, so children travel looking at the back until they reach the weight and height limits indicated by the manufacturer. Vehicle characteristics. You must make sure that the CRS can be installed in your vehicle, taking into account the car's size and the car seat to be used, plus the type of anchor, like ISOFIX, latch, or seatbelt. And remember to review your vehicle's manual to check what the anchor system exists in the vehicle. This is an indicator of ISOFIX or latch anchor, and this is an indicator of a vehicle tether. You can look at those symbols in the car so you notice where is the child restraint system being attached. Family group characteristics. You must make sure that all vehicle passengers travel with a restraint system that is appropriate for them. Therefore, the installation of a CRS must not interfere with the correct adjustment of other restraint systems that are used by other passengers. It has to be easy to install. It is recommended that CRS can be easily installed in your vehicle. This can be anchored to the vehicle through latch or ISOFIX systems or with the car's seatbelt. If they are correctly installed, any of those three systems are safe by itself. Therefore, it is not necessary to use two systems at the same time, unless it is indicated in the CRS manufacturer. Those are images of the different CRS anchor systems, latch and tether, isofix, and the seatbelt. It must meet known regulations. You must make sure that the CRS to be used is certified according to current regulations. Child restraint systems have to get authorized by the Ministry of Transport and Telecommunications and must have a yellow label like the one shown in this image. About the cyclists, a bicycle is one more vehicle in the roadway, and they are more and more common in our country as a form of transportation. Cyclists, just like other drivers, should know the rules that can regulate traffic, but unfortunately, this is not always the case. Many cyclists do not know the rules of the road and take a lot of risks, which is why you should, as a driver, not trust their conduct and, when necessary, should yield to cyclists. Head injuries are the most important kind of injury in accidents involving cyclists. Wearing a helmet reduces the probability of suffering these kinds of injuries. Unfortunately, many cyclists do not wear helmets. So you have to be precautious when facing cyclists on the road. For example, when passing near a cyclist, leave a lateral space of at least 1.5 meters, since bicycles can deviate, swerve, or wobble. This is more likely to happen when there are strong winds or on hills, due to the increased effort required of the cyclist. When in the presence of a cyclist on a sidewalk, be prepared to stop, as he or she could suddenly enter the roadway. Don't be sure when a cyclist doesn't signal that he or she will not turn. When you're behind a cyclist, be especially aware at intersections. Remember that cyclists generally do not have rear view mirrors. Do not overtake, therefore, a cyclist before or in the middle of an intersection, especially if you are going to turn right. So wait until the cyclist has passed on the intersection. At night, be especially careful in sectors with frequent cyclists. Cyclists do not always use lights that allows us to see them well. Other vulnerable users, for example, animal-drawn vehicles. Reflect when you encounter someone on horseback on a road or a highway and prepare to slow down. If the horse is traveling in the same direction as you and at the same time there are many vehicles coming in the other direction, do not get too close and wait until the oncoming vehicles have passed in order to pass the rider. Maintain a good lateral distance. A person on a horseback may not be aware of traffic rules, or the horse may get spooked for any reason, just as you are passing. Do not make light or sound signals or accelerate the engine when near a horse. This also holds in the presence of other animals on the road, such as sheep or livestock. In rural areas where it is more common to find people on horsebacks, be aware of their presence, especially on right-hand curves. About elderly drivers. In general, elderly people have a lot of experience as drivers and are cautious behind the wheel. However, there are psychological changes that occur with age, which can affect driving capacity. The deterioration of psychomotor abilities necessary for driving can mean, for example, the loss of force upon braking, worse control of the steering wheel, diminished capacity to maintain attention, slower processing of information on the road, or an increased reaction time. Because of this, many senior citizens have an increased risk of getting into accidents in complicated traffic situations that require quick reactions. However, in situations where there is enough time to react, they have the same problems as young people. As a result, it is important to give them enough time and not pressure them to act. About motorcyclists. Motorcycles are a means of transportation that is becoming more and more popular. Their ease of driving, mobility, reduced size, and comfort are more than enough reason to choose this vehicle as your means of transportation. Despite their advantages, due to their characteristics, accidents involving this kind of vehicle can easily be fatal for motorcyclists. The probability of death is much greater in a two-wheeled vehicle than in a standard four-wheeled vehicle. Collisions in intersections involving motorcycles are frequent. Because of this, you should take special care when approaching intersections, as due to the high speed of these vehicles and its difficulty to be seen in time. As a driver, be especially careful with motorcycles because they are small and difficult to see. And with that, we finish this topic about vulnerable users. Thank you.